welcome to another episode of Catholic Reboot. This is about feast days, and I don't know if you remember or if you even watched one of the episodes I did on this podcast about the liturgical calendar. But what I find really interesting is, and I've said this before in different episodes, we really spend a lot of time watching television and the news, but if we could get in a good habit of just every day looking at our Catholic calendar, and I'm actually going to provide an example on the screen along with a URL address so that you can see what I'm talking about. Rather than worrying about the latest sports event, the latest episode on our favorite channel, whatever that is, your Netflix, Prime, Disney, favorite sports teams, just take a break and when you start your day, look at the calendar and see what feast day it is, right? So why do we call it a feast day? Because typically we're going to celebrate and even have a feast maybe around the saint of that day, right? Now, what's important to remember is that we tend to forget our ancestry. We tend to forget anyone further back than our grandparents and maybe even our grandparents. So we forget all this great works they did, and the things that we have today, we have to give them credit for that. As far as our church, to know what that saint did on the day you're celebrating, right, is to look at the saint's name, then take a little time away and research the saint. Find out what it is they did, how they did it, and then before you know it, if you do this over a year and then you repeat it the next year, you're going to become like an encyclopedia on feast days. You may not remember every feast day. That's a lot to remember. Although I do know a brother in a religious order, you could stop him anytime and say, not only what is the feast day of the day, but you could say, what's the feast day for August 15th? And boom, what's the feast day of September? He actually was like a walking encyclopedia. He knew exactly whose feast day it was. Now, the interesting part of that is once you learn the feast day of that saint, you then actually should get in the habit of finding out what they are the patron saint of. Many are patron saints, like St. Jude is despair. If you look at St. John Vianney, he is the patron saint of priests. Okay, and why is that? So when you find out, you actually use that day when you're doing your daily prayers to pray through that saint for intercession and ask for assistance. Now, how great is that, right? And you have to think about Christ just kind of shaking his head saying, I sent all these great saints into the world so that you can emulate them. You not only can see what they did and the great works they did, but you can also start to say, well, maybe I could be working towards sainthood if I tried to follow their example, right? And in a previous episode, I had brought this up, that we tend to look at saints as something old, not relevant. And there used to be a time where Catholics would always name their newborns or their children after a saint, right? There was great respect for the life and times that they lived in. So let's make it really easy, and I promise this episode is going to be probably my shortest. But get in the habit. If you don't want to use the link I'm providing and you actually want to go out and buy a traditional calendar, you can start doing that and then take the time to research the life of those great saints and pray through those saints. And because a lot of them are waiting for us, right? We just forget, we don't call on them. Let's start calling on them, all right? You'd be amazed at what you'll discover when you do that. Now, in the previous episode, I had discussed the liturgical calendar, and you may wonder, well, what's the difference in a liturgical calendar and a calendar on the feast days? Well, a good liturgical calendar does have both. I just want you to kind of start slow if you don't want to jump in to the Mass of the day, and just concentrate on the saint and do the research. You may be amazed at what you'll find out. Okay. Thank you very much.